If you've been eating carefully for years and still dealing with joint pain, fatigue, or brain fog that won't quit, 10 foods are probably still on your plate, and at least a few of them are ones you'd never suspect. That's actually what I see most often. Not someone eating terribly and wondering why they feel terrible. It's the person who's genuinely trying, because the advice they've been given doesn't account for how differently the body responds after 65. After 65, your inflammatory baseline is already elevated. That's just biology. It's not a personal failing. But it does mean certain foods are hitting you harder than they would have 20 years ago. Things that were fine in your 40s are working against you now, and a few of them are foods still broadly considered healthy. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take you through 10 foods that are fueling chronic inflammation in seniors, explain why each one is a problem specifically at this stage of life, and what you can do instead. Some of these are going to be obvious. A few are going to catch you off guard. Let's get into it. There's a term scientists use called inflammaging, the chronic low-grade inflammation that accumulates with age. And here's what most people don't know about it. It's not something that only kicks in when you get sick or injured. It's running all the time, in the background, even on your good days. Researchers have measured this. Inflammatory markers in the blood of adults over 65 are 2 to 3 times higher than in younger adults. Not because something has gone wrong, but because that's just how the aging immune system behaves. It starts running hotter. Now, why does that matter for what you eat? Because when you're already at 2 to 3 times the baseline, every pro-inflammatory food you put in your body is being added to a fire that's already lit. A 35-year-old eating the same meal might feel absolutely nothing. You might wake up the next morning stiff, foggy, worn out. Same food, completely different response, because you're starting from a different place. This is why general nutrition advice, the kind written for the broad population, often misses the mark for seniors. It's not calibrated for where you actually are. So what does chronic inflammation actually do when it runs unchecked for years? It damages blood vessels first, then cartilage in your joints starts to break down, and over time, it interferes with how your brain clears out waste, quietly, without symptoms, until one day, it isn't quiet anymore. It's tied to heart disease, type 2 diabetes, arthritis, and the one that really stopped me when I saw the data, dementia. There was a study out of the Karolinska Institutet in Sweden. They followed over 84,000 older adults for more than 12 years, and what they found was that the people eating the most pro-inflammatory diet developed dementia 2 full years earlier than those eating anti-inflammatory. 2 years. Not a rounding error, 2 years of memory, of recognizing the faces of people you love, of knowing where you are and what day it is, and being able to have a conversation and follow along. And that's what I want you to hold on to as we go through this list. This isn't about losing weight or fitting into something. It's about how many good years you have and how present you actually are in them. Because here's the reality. I've seen what this looks like when nothing changes. Someone who was sharp and active, gardening on Saturday mornings, keeping up with their grandkids, traveling, and then the slow slide. The mornings that take 2 hours just to get moving, joint pain bad enough to cancel plans, needing help with things they never imagined needing help with. Not because of one big diagnosis, because of 1,000 meals that quietly added up over years. It doesn't have to go that way. And the good news, and there's a lot of it, is that diet is one of the most powerful levers you actually have. The same research that shows food drives, this also shows that changing what you eat can meaningfully pull those inflammatory markers back down, at any age. So let's talk about what's on your plate. Food 1, ultra-processed foods. And the first place to start isn't the obvious one. It's not candy bars and fast food. Most people have already mentally filed those away. It's the food that's been processed to the point where your body doesn't quite recognize what to do with it. The protein bar on your counter, the multigrain crackers in the pantry, the flavored oatmeal packets, the cereal that says whole grain on the front but has more additives than it has fiber. Ultra-processed means anything industrially manufactured with ingredients you wouldn't find in a regular kitchen. Emulsifiers, flavor enhancers, modified starches, hydrogenated oils, stabilizers. These aren't foods, they're food-shaped products. And your immune system knows the difference even when your taste buds don't. Here's where the age piece becomes important. Research involving over 9,000 adults found that people aged 50 and older who consumed the most ultra-processed foods had significantly higher levels of HSCRP, a blood marker that directly measures systemic inflammation, and that the inflammatory effect intensifies with age. Same food, worse outcome the older you get. Part of the mechanism is your gut. Ultra-processed foods strip out the fiber and plant compounds that your gut bacteria depend on, while loading in additives that actively disrupt the microbiome. And when your gut microbiome is compromised, your body's inflammatory signaling goes with it, because a huge portion of your immune regulation happens right there in your digestive tract. It's not just about calories, it's about what these products do to the ecosystem inside you. Food too. Processed meats, hot dogs, bacon, sausage, the deli turkey you throw on a sandwich for lunch because it's quick and it seems like a reasonable choice. This one has some of the clearest data of anything on this list. A study out of the UK Biobank, over 400,000 adults, found that for every additional 50 grams of processed meat consumed per day, blood inflammation markers increased by nearly 40%. That's almost 40% more measurable inflammation in your bloodstream from what amounts to a couple of slices of deli meat or a few strips of bacon. Okay. And let me walk something back here, because I don't want you hearing this and throwing out everything in your fridge. The problem isn't bacon on a Sunday morning once in a while. It's the daily deli sandwich, the breakfast sausage as a regular habit, processed meat as a staple. That cumulative, consistent load is what the data is capturing. So why is processed meat specifically so problematic? It's the sodium, working alongside the nitrate preservatives, alongside the saturated fat. And then there's something called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, which form during curing and smoking. These aren't separate concerns. They all land at once, every time you eat it. And your body's ability to clear those AGE compounds slows significantly with age. What a 40-year-old processes and moves on from, you're carrying a lot longer. Food 3. Added sugar and sugary drinks. This one you probably expected to see, but stay with me here, because the conversation around sugar almost always stops at blood sugar spikes and weight gain, and that's only the beginning of what it's doing. When you consume a lot of added sugar, your body produces those same AGEs we just talked about with processed meat. Excess sugar in your bloodstream starts bonding to proteins and fats, a process called glycation. The compounds that result are direct inflammatory triggers, and your immune system has to respond to them every time it encounters them. They accumulate in your joints, in your blood vessel walls, in your brain tissue. So what does that mean in practice? Every sweetened yogurt, every morning pastry, every glass of juice isn't just spiking your blood sugar and coming back down. It's leaving something behind that your body then has to fight day after day. And the delivery method matters. Liquid sugar, sodas, juices, sweetened coffees bypasses the natural brakes that whole food triggers. There's no fiber slowing it down, no chewing. It hits your bloodstream fast and hard, and the inflammatory response follows. If you're regularly drinking your sugar, that's the first place to focus. Food 4. Refined carbohydrates. White bread, white rice, regular pasta, most breakfast cereals, anything made from grain that's been stripped of its fiber and bran. These break down almost immediately into sugar in your digestive tract. And when they hit your bloodstream that fast, you get the same glycation cascade we just talked about with added sugar. Same mechanism, different packaging. The reason this catches people off guard is that refined carbs don't taste sweet. A slice of white bread doesn't feel like eating sugar, but metabolically, your body processes it almost identically. The fiber that would have slowed everything down is gone, and this connects back to what we said about AGEs. That same process, excess sugar bonding to proteins and fats, gets triggered every time refined carbs flood your bloodstream in that rush. The whole grain version of the same food comes with fiber that changes the breakdown entirely. Brown rice instead of white, whole grain bread instead of white. That single swap, done consistently, genuinely alters the inflammatory picture. Food 5. Trans fats. This one was supposed to have been largely solved. The FDA moved to eliminate partially hydrogenated oils from the food supply in 2018, but they're still showing up in some margarines, in packaged baked goods, in non-dairy coffee creamers, in microwave popcorn, in refrigerated dough products. Trans fats are artificial fats made by pumping hydrogen into liquid vegetable oil. They push your bad cholesterol up and your protective cholesterol down, and on top of that, they directly increase measurable inflammation markers in the blood. Johns Hopkins Medicine puts them at the top of their list of foods to avoid for inflammation. Check labels for partially hydrogenated oils. That phrase means trans fat, regardless of what the front of the package claims. Food 6. Vegetable oils high in omega-6. And this is the one most people, even people paying close attention, never see coming. Your body needs both omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. The issue is the ratio. Ideally, you want something close to 1.4 or better. Most seniors are walking around at something closer to 115, 120, because the oils in almost every processed food, every restaurant fryer, every bottle of heart-healthy cooking oil, corn oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil are extremely high in omega-6. When omega-6 is this far out of balance with omega-3, it pushes your body's inflammatory signaling in the wrong direction. Not because omega-6 is inherently bad, you do need it, but because at these ratios, it tips the scale. So what does that actually look like in your kitchen? It's the corn oil you've been cooking with for years because someone told you it was better than butter. It's the store-bought salad dressing made with soybean oil. It's every packaged snack fried in vegetable oil. None of these look like offenders. That's the problem. The correction is straightforward. Extra virgin olive oil for most cooking and all dressings. Avocado oil when you need higher heat. More fatty fish, walnuts and flaxseed to bring omega-3 back up. The ratio is fixable, but you have to see it first. Food 7. Excess alcohol. For seniors, excess alcohol starts at more than 7 drinks per week. Not 7 a night, 7 total for the week. That's about 1 per day. And a lot of people who think of themselves as moderate drinkers are sitting right at or just over that line. Alcohol at those levels burdens the liver, the same organ responsible for clearing inflammatory compounds from your blood. When the liver is consistently working to process alcohol, it's doing less of everything else. The result is a body-wide inflammatory load that compounds everything else already on this list. Actually, let me be more specific, because I don't want this to land as never have a glass of wine again. The real inflection point is consistency, not an occasional drink. Daily drinking, even at what feels like a moderate amount, gives the liver no time to reset. That's the distinction. Occasional is genuinely different from habitual. Now pay attention to this, because this is where the stakes of everything on this list really come into focus. Researchers used MRI scans to measure actual brain structure in people eating pro-inflammatory diets. What they found was that those people had brains measurably older than their chronological age, by about half a year on average. And the effect was stronger in adults over 60. Half a year might sound modest, but think about what that looks like compounded over 5 or 10 years. Think about the version of yourself at 80, whether you can still drive yourself to an appointment, still hold a conversation with your grandchildren without losing the thread, still read a book and remember what you read the chapter before, or whether that's quietly slipped. This is one of the mechanisms behind that gap, and it starts with what's on your plate every day for years. I've sat with people in their mid-70s who are only just learning this, and what they almost always say, almost word for word, is, "I wish I'd known sooner," not because it was too late to help them, because they could see where the road would have gone differently. You're watching this. That already matters. Food 8. Fried foods. High heat cooking, deep frying, pan frying at very high temperatures, heavily charred grilling, is one of the most efficient ways to load a meal with inflammatory compounds. We've mentioned ages several times now, and this is where they're produced in the highest concentrations. When protein and fat are cooked at high heat, the surface undergoes a chemical reaction that generates ages far more rapidly than any other cooking method. That's the browning, the crispiness, the char. It tastes good, but what's being created in that process is a concentrated source of compounds your immune system has to respond to every time you eat them. And here's something worth knowing. Older adults absorb and retain dietary ages more efficiently than younger people. The body's ability to clear them slows with age, so you're taking in more of them, clearing fewer of them, and your starting baseline is already elevated. It compounds quietly. The most actionable swap on this entire list might be right here, because the food itself isn't the problem. The method is baking, steaming, poaching, slow cooking, light sautéing, same ingredients, dramatically fewer ages. You don't have to give up the food, you change how it's prepared. Food 9. Red meat in high amounts. This one needs some nuance because the research is more specific than the headlines usually make it sound. Unprocessed red meat, a beefsteak, a lamb chop, ground beef, is not the same story as processed red meat. The UK Biobank data we looked at earlier, with over 400,000 adults, showed unprocessed red meat associated with roughly a 14% increase in inflammation markers per 50 grams per day. That's real, but it's less than half the effect of processed meat. The distinction matters. The problem isn't red meat as an occasional meal. It's red meat as the center of the plate every day, especially cooked at high heat, well done, charred, blackened, because that's when the age load from the cooking method stacks on top of everything else. And at high, regular quantities, the saturated fat is doing additional work on inflammatory signaling. So what does the research actually suggest? 3 to 4 times a week of unprocessed red meat appears to be where the risk profile starts shifting meaningfully. If it's once or twice a week, cooked gently, this isn't your biggest concern. If it's at every dinner and always well done, that's worth adjusting. Food 10. Light, diet, and low-fat packaged products. And this is the one that catches people most off guard because it's supposed to be the responsible choice. Low-fat flavored yogurt, reduced-fat salad dressing, diet crackers, low-fat peanut butter, light mayonnaise. These have been marketed as the health-conscious option for decades, and a lot of people have been faithfully choosing them. But here's the thing. When you remove fat from a processed food, you have to replace it with something. Otherwise, the texture falls apart and it tastes like nothing. What manufacturers almost always replace it with is some combination of added sugar, modified starch, and additional stabilizers to hold it together and extend shelf life. So you end up with a product that has less fat and significantly more of the exact things we've been talking about this entire video. The light label is not a proxy for anti-inflammatory. In a lot of cases, it's the opposite. Plain full-fat yogurt with fresh fruit has less sugar than most flavored low-fat versions on the shelf. A drizzle of olive oil and vinegar has fewer inflammatory ingredients than almost any bottled low-fat dressing. Minimally processed, whole food, consistently, beats the engineered low-fat substitute, and this connects all the way back to where we started. It's often the foods that look like the careful choice that are doing the quiet damage. So there they are, 10 foods. And I'm not going to tell you to clear out your kitchen and start over tomorrow. That's not how lasting change works, and you already know that. Pick 2 or 3 things from this list that genuinely show up in your regular routine. The daily deli sandwich, the cooking oil you've had under the stove for years, the low-fat flavored yogurt every morning. Start there. Make that swap consistently and pay attention to how you feel over the next few weeks. Your joints, your energy, how quickly your mind gets going in the morning. Those are the early signs that things are moving in the right direction. The next step is just one swap. If this was useful, subscribe. I put out a new video every week on what the research actually says about eating well in your 60s, 70s, and beyond, without all the noise and contradiction. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.